Welcome to the WION podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and ideas from various fields. In this episode, we break down the haunting visuals of blood-red water on Iran's Hormuz beach that stunned the internet and sparked prophecy fears worldwide. As rain transforms the shoreline into a deep crimson spectacle, we question, are these scenes a warning from ancient scriptures, or a striking reminder of how powerful nature and science can appear when misunderstood? Iran was drenched by welcome rains on December 10th, as it battles the driest autumn in over 50 years. On Hormuz Island's Red Beach, the water turned red, giving the illusion of blood-drenched rivers. According to social media posts, the beach and the sea were awash with a bright red color. Videos and photos of the red water were splashed across social media, although it couldn't be verified whether they were linked to the December 16th rains or if they were from March this year, when similar scenes were witnessed in Hormuz. It is possible that the posts are sharing older images and videos of the red rain from the previous event. Irrespective of that, the red water has generated a lot of curiosity among netizens as Iran, battling drought, saw rainfall after a long time. Some of them linked it to a biblical prophecy which describes the world ending and the sea, rivers and springs turning to blood. A user wrote on X, "Blood in water is an apocalypse sign primarily comes from the biblical book of Revelation, describing angels pouring bowls that turn sea, rivers and springs to blood as divine judgment during the end times." As another one asked, "It looks biblical. Is this common?" One user pointed out how a similar scene years ago would have been immediately linked to a higher power. Damn, I bet if this happened in classical Egypt, it could totally start a new cult or some kind of religion. Good thing people today are smart enough to know the science and ignore the superstitions. Basically, there is science behind the vivid red color of the red beach in Hormuz. The soil and rocks here contain high amounts of iron oxide, which leads to the red color when rain falls. Iron oxide can also turn the soil yellow and brown, but the red here comes from the mineral hematite. Old visuals of red water pouring down cliffs have gone viral on social media, with some comparing it to the end of times biblical prophecy. However, the scientific explanation for this occurrence is pretty clear.
And we are live on WION Wild as One. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. I'm Eric Njoka, the headlines. Brazilian President Lula da Silva says U.S. military action in Venezuela would spark a humanitarian catastrophe, claiming that South America would be haunted by foreign troops. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow cannot decide on the organization of elections in Ukraine after Russian President Putin suggested halting strikes for Kiev to hold a presidential ballot. U.S. negotiators are set to meet Russian officials in Florida. Talks aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine. President Putin's envoy Kirill Dmitriev is leading the Russian delegation that will meet with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Bangladeshi youth leader Sharif Osman Hadi is laid to rest near the Dhaka University Central Mosque. He has been buried next to the grave of Bangladesh's national poet Qazi Islam. The youth leader was shot on December 12th and later succumbed to his wounds on December 18th. Afghanistan Health Minister attends interactive session on strengthening New Delhi-Kabul ties, says India is a second home for the country. The session highlighted pharmaceutical sector as a key focus, noting that Afghanistan's market relies heavily on supplies from India. Palestinians hold a funeral of 5 killed in Israeli strikes on a school sheltering displaced people in Gaza City. Palestinian officials reported most of the killed were children. The IDF says it is currently reviewing details of the incident. A massive fire breaks out in a plastic manufacturing unit in Talaseri. Fire trucks are on the scene, attempted to extinguish the fire. There is no confirmation of the injuries so far.
And today, crews are working to get the lights back on for those thousands of homes across Maine still dealing with outages. News Center Maine's Akua Deval has more on the restoration efforts and when utility companies expect they'll be finished.
I looked out my window, didn't see anything. I opened up the door, and the power line is down really right in front of our porch there.
Caleb Ponte is one of tens of thousands of Mainers who lost power Friday after a powerful storm swept through the state, bringing heavy rain and strong winds.
So I was just kind of sitting in my room, and then all of a sudden there was like 2, I guess explosions would kind of be how I would describe them. I mean, it was nerve-wracking. Like the flash from the explosions was literally like right outside of my room.
At the peak of everything, we saw just under 40,000 people out.
Emily Tadlock with Versant Power says as of Saturday afternoon, that number is down to nearly 17,000 customers without electricity. According to the U.S. Power Outage Map, by Saturday afternoon, Hancock and Penobscot counties were hit the hardest.
Right now, it's still down trees and down power lines. Luckily, the wind has died down. That was a really big issue for us last night and for our overnight crews. We weren't able to get up in buckets because the winds were still so strong.
Our storm calls can be ranged from a lot of different things. From a simple tree down in the road, it can be flooded basements, it can be CO calls because somebody didn't put their generator in the right spot.
Holden Fire Rescue Lieutenant Chris Lucy says generators are one of the biggest safety concerns during extended power outages.
The other thing is to get them far enough away from your house so the exhaust isn't blowing into your house and causing a CO problem. That is a major concern.
Even as crews continue restoration work, officials say dangers don't end when the wind stops.
Don't drive over downed lines. Do not touch a tree that is down over a power line. And even be careful touching a tree in general that's down.
Versant Power says crews will continue to work around the clock until service is fully restored, which they expect by Sunday. In Bangor, Akua Deval, News Center, Maine.
I also spoke with a CMP spokesperson today. He says he expects the majority of the outages will be resolved overnight. He says he expects crews will restore those final outages by the end of the day tomorrow.
Some spots along the Clackamas River inundated with water after the river breached its banks overnight. Hardly a house untouched in the Paradise Park neighborhood of Eagle Creek, which is where we find Jake Holter with a look at the aftermath. Jake?
Yeah, that's right, Tim. So Paradise Park was issued a level 3 go now evacuation order overnight. We stopped by this home yesterday when the owner was preparing for the flood. What ended up happening, he could hardly believe.
It came right through here, came through our carport, came across the side of the house, came on the other side of the house. You can see it dug out all under the carport.
Rob Hudson says the river itself was flowing underneath his home, dragging debris through his carport, dislodging his drain pipe, and even getting inside the home as it continued to rise.
The whole street turned into the river, basically.
While he spent Thursday sandbagging the back of his son's home as well, it's still flooded as water ended up coming through the front. Across the way, the water running right into Bill Madden's garage.
Came right up to there. So we just missed the drywall.
Madden owns Barton Antique Mall and says thousands of dollars worth of product has been destroyed.
Yeah, pure devastation. And you come here and you look at it and where do I start?
But luckily this family heirloom, a 1960 Rolls Royce, was mostly spared.
Still got some Grey Poupon in there for you.
And further down Paradise Road, Larry Krause's cabin flooded out.
When I got home at 1, I said, no problem, I'll spend the night here and deal with it tomorrow. But then, as 2 or 3 more hours went on, and you watch the water come up, and then NOAA changed their reporting, and then I got some calls from people who had been down here for 30, 40 years, and they said, hey, they thought NOAA was spot on. But I mean, it seemed like impossible based on what you were seeing out there.
NOAA data has the river reaching more than 26 feet overnight.
Probably between a foot and a half.
Krause says it was a mad dash to get everything up off the floor.
Panic is what it, is the way I would put it. It was just.
The water's still very high near his home Friday afternoon as cleanup begins. The Red Cross had set up an emergency shelter overnight in Oregon City for those who had to evacuate and had nowhere to go. The river now at minor flooding stage here in Paradise Park. Back to you.
It's the goal of the blockade with Venezuela to regime change.
It's the blockade. Not going to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through. You remember they took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back. But they took it. They illegally took it. Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had, they took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching, but they're not going to do that. We want it back. They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it
back. The Russia-Ukraine war is supposed to be wrapping up. Multiple rounds of peace talks have taken place. The U.S. is hosting more talks over the weekend to come to a final settlement. But instead of winding down, the war seems to be expanding. To be specific, it's expanding geographically. Ukraine's latest attack on Russia took place far away in the Mediterranean Sea. The attack was unprecedented in terms of distance, and it marks a new phase of the war. Here's a report.
Russia and Ukraine are neighbors. They share an almost 2,000-kilometer-long border. So, you might assume that the war would be restricted to this vast battlefront. We may even expect the fighting to spill over into their shared water body, the Black Sea. That has certainly been the case throughout the war, which is fast approaching the 4-year mark. But on Friday, Ukraine released this video. Kyiv claims that it shows Ukrainian drones attacking a tanker from Russia's Shadow Fleet. Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil tankers aren't novel anymore. Kyiv has attacked several of them in the Black Sea already. But Friday's attack took place around here, in the Mediterranean Sea, a little north of Libya's Benghazi. That's about 2,000 kilometers away from Ukraine, the farthest afield that they have struck so far. The ship has been identified as the Kendal. It's a crude oil tanker registered to Oman. Reports say the ship made port in Suez on December 16th, and it was headed to Ust-Luga in Russia's Leningrad region. But then, Ukraine launched its attack, leading the Kendal to change its route. Reports say it is now on its way to Aliaga in Turkey. Ukraine says the attack on the tanker was justified. The ship has been sanctioned by the UK and Europe. Kyiv says the tanker is a legitimate target because it helps fill the Russian coffers and thus fuel Moscow's war machine. And Ukraine says that it will not stop with these attacks. The war has expanded. It is no longer confined to the immediate area around Russia and Ukraine. And this expansion comes even as a Russian delegation is heading to the US to discuss peace terms. Will the Mediterranean attack derail the already tenuous negotiations? Will Moscow be willing to turn a blind eye for the sake of peace? Or has the latest attack just ensured that the war will go on in an ever-expanding arena? Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
In his annual marathon news conference, Vladimir Putin spoke for hours, but mostly repeated the same messages he's been delivering for years. He said Russia does not consider itself responsible for the loss of life in Ukraine, claiming it didn't start the war. But it is, of course, Russia that has been trying to seize an even greater part of Ukraine, leaving embattled cities in ruin. This is Kostiantynivka in the Donetsk region. The burnt-out equipment shows the ferocity of the fighting here. So too do the freshly dug graves. The sound of drones overhead is so constant that the few still living here simply carry on. The Russians hit over there. It's always like this, said this man. On Friday, EU leaders agreed to loan Ukraine 90 billion euros or 145 billion Canadian dollars over the next 2 years. But the bloc didn't agree on the contentious issue of using the frozen Russian assets.
Ukraine will only repay this loan once Russia pays reparations.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was in Poland thanking Kyiv's allies. Around the same time, Ukraine's intelligence service released this video, saying for the first time it used aerial drones to target a Russian shadow tanker in the Mediterranean Sea. Putin claims Russia is ready for peace, saying it's now up to Ukraine and its Western allies. The U.S. continues to steer negotiations with talks scheduled for this weekend, but it's Moscow that still refuses to agree to even a temporary ceasefire. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.